Pinch punch, it's the first of the month. Let's balance the books and then we'll have lunch. I'm sorry about that. Happy Monday, welcome back to Drinking by My Shelf. I usually hold up my drink at that point. There it is. My name is Emma and this is Balancing the Books. If you do not know, Balancing the Books is the game I play every month where I balance up all of the books that came onto my TBR with all of the books that came off my TBR and try to make those numbers balanced. At the end of this video, I am also going to be incorporating my new game, Book Trail. We're combining those into two for this video, but do let me know if you'd rather I separated them out in the future, but that's what we're going with for now. Starting though with balancing the books, I did really well last month. So my TBR at the beginning of February was only 37 books. That is the lowest I think it has ever been. This month, however, I'm predicting I didn't do so well because I bought a lot of books and I didn't read quite as many as usual. I just didn't really feel like reading this month, okay, sue me. So if you cast your memories all the way back to the beginning of the month, I did a challenge with my best pal Emma Tobias, the Love-Hate Challenge, round 4 I think we're on at this point, and the theme was books or movies or songs with our name somewhere in them, whether they're by an Emma or about an Emma, whatever. So Emma, other Emma, set me these two books to read that are both by Emma Straub, The Vacationers and Modern Lovers. So that is two books that I hauled this month, but it is also two books that I read this month. One of these is a book that Emma hates and one of them is a book that Emma loves, and to find out which way round, you will have to watch the video, so I will link to that in the description below. It was really fun. I think it's the best of our love-hate challenges that we've done so far. But I will now tell you my thoughts. I liked both of these books, but I much preferred this one, Modern Lovers. So Modern Lovers is about a group of friends. What is that noise outside? I don't know if you can hear that. Someone is being loud. We have a group of friends, they're living in Brooklyn, they were friends at uni and they were in this band, and then the other fourth member of their band went on to become really famous, singing a song that one of these women actually wrote. But she then died young, aged 27, and has become this tragic icon. Anyway, we are following the other members of this friendship group, but they're all grown up now, they're all settled, they've got kids of their own, their friendships have changed and evolved over the years, and it's not a super plot heavy book, which I love. It's just like an exploration of these characters and how they're feeling and the weird little midlife crises that they have. I thought it was really good. I also read The Vacationers, which was a very similar book in terms of the vibes, but just didn't work for me. Because in this book, I was really interested in each of the characters, and in this book, I was not. I'm so warm. The sun is coming directly through the window at me. I might have to take my jumper off in a minute. Then I won't match the thumbnail. It'll be very confusing. In this one, we have a family. The marriage is in trouble, and the couple with their daughter, plus some other family friends, and their son and his girlfriend. Wow, there's more characters than I remembered. All go on holiday, and not much happens. So I would say this was a 4, this was a 3, this is a book that I will keep and potentially read again, this is a book that I will not read again and will pass on for someone else to enjoy. Okay, then I did another challenge with Leanne. This was, what was the name of this challenge? We didn't really have a name for it. We just set each other books to read or to buddy read. There was a scavenger hunt involved. It was very complicated. I will link below to that video as well. My one ended up being called the Murder and Magic reading vlog. Anyway, again for that challenge I had to haul 3 books: The Furies by Katie Lowe, The Immortalists by Chloe Benjamin, and on my Kindle, The Good Daughter by Karin Slaughter. But once again, I read all 3 books. You can get my detailed thoughts in the reading vlog, but I will tell you now, I did not like The Furies at all. I thought it was crap. I thought it was a really good premise, and I've read interviews with the author, and what she was trying to do was really cool. I love this in theory, but it did not work for me. I did not engage with any of the characters. I don't have to like characters. In fact, I love unlikable characters, but I have to get them, or I have to care about them. I have to see some kind of journey. In this one, I thought the characters were all just quite shitty people at the beginning and then continued to be shitty people. I wanted to see them descend into madness. This book in general just had so much promise. There are so many really cool places it could have gone. I haven't told you what it's about. It's about a group of friends at this elite school who get obsessed with a charismatic teacher who's telling them about all these rumours of witchcraft and women that were at this school before, and they try and call upon the Furies to help them get revenge. So it's this really cool premise, and it's set in the 90s, but it didn't make very much of the fact that it was in the 90s. That could have been more fun, and I wanted to see this dark, witchy. Is it supernatural? Is it not? Have they actually invoked the Furies, or are they all just like becoming hysterical and egging each other on to do these terrible things? That's what I thought I was going to get from this, and in fact I just got something a lot more boring. The Immortalists I really liked. It's a bloody weird book, and you can see in the reading vlog me struggling a little bit with it. Not in terms of the plot is weird but in a good way. The writing is weird in a weird way. She makes some very strange choices in terms of language that, even having read and enjoyed the whole book now, I don't understand why she went down that path. So it's like mixed review from me, but I did really like it because the plot really worked for me. It's about these 4 siblings who, when they're children, they go and see a fortune teller who tells them the day that each of them are going to die. And we then have 4 sections to the book, and we follow each sibling one after another up until the point that they die, and whether or not they do die on the day that was predicted, and how this prophecy affected their life, and again whether it really is magic or whether it's this self-fulfilling prophecy. And I really liked that. I thought it really worked for me, and I really was invested in the characters in this book. So yeah, mixed review because the writing was strange, but an interesting story that I'm glad I read. Leanne did not feel quite the same. You'll have to watch her video to see why. And then finally for that challenge I read The Good Daughter by Karin Slaughter, which I had previously DNF'd because it was too gory and I hate gore, but Leanne made me read it again because she's a whore. And I will say I was pleasantly surprised. I didn't love it, I didn't like fall head over heels with it, and I wasn't super invested most of the way through, but it wasn't as bad as I remembered in terms of gore. Some sections were, but that didn't last too much throughout the book. And it was about sisters, which is always a big plus in my book. So I got really invested in the story towards the end, but it took me a while to get into it, and it's not one I would read again, and I'm still unsure of whether Karin Slaughter is going to be a good author for me, because I've heard that this is like her least gory of her books, and it was already my top limit, so I'm not sure I will continue. But if you have any suggestions of Karin Slaughter books that you think I can handle, and be warned, I really can't handle much, then let me know and I'm willing to try it out. Okay, so far so good, books all balanced. But then I went on a bit of a hauling spree, getting ready for Tis the Damn Readathon, which is a Taylor Swift readathon that I'm co-hosting. It's running the whole of March, and it's really cool, if I do say so myself. Loads of people have been involved in coming up with it, it's awesome. I'm not going to talk about it in this video, that's not the point, but I will put a link below to everything you need to know about it. So I hauled a bunch of books that I wanted to read for the readathon. One of the prompts is about reading a retelling, so I got this book, very nice little short book, that actually one of my patrons recommended for me. Nikki recommended this, and it's a loose retelling of Alice in Wonderland, and Taylor Swift has sung about Alice in Wonderland, so I felt like that was a good connection here. It actually doesn't say anything about Alice in Wonderland on the back of the book, but when I read a review of it, it did say that that was the vibe. I can see the connection here reading this. We get a woman in the Japanese countryside who follows a strange creature to the riverbank and then falls down a hole that seems to have been made specifically for her, and a series of bizarre experiences follow. So that's very Alice in Wonderland vibes. It says it's unsettling. Can't wait. Tell Me Your Secret by Dorothy Koomson I got because there is a prompt in there about reading thrillers. You know I love a thriller, and I wanted to get a fun new one. So this, I haven't read Dorothy Koomson before, but I've heard a lot about her as a good thriller writer. She wrote a series called The Ice Cream Girls, which I've seen a few people talking about. So this is about a woman who 10 years ago survived a weekend with a serial killer, never told anyone what happened, and moved on with her life. But now the man who kidnapped her is hunting down his other past victims. Terrifying. I got this one, Leave the World Behind by Rumaan Alam. One of the prompts is about reading a book that someone recommended to you, and one of my colleagues at work recommended this to me because I love like weird dystopian shit. What's this about? That sounds scary. So we have a couple who've gone on a holiday to Long Island. They've rented a really nice home, but in the middle of the night there is a knock on the door, and an older couple who say that they own the home have arrived there in a panic, saying that a weird power outage has swept the whole city and they've had to come here to shelter. But the power is out, there's like no internet, there's no TV, so no one actually can prove what's really happening should they trust this couple. Sounds very scary. I hauled Mr. Loverman by Bernardine Evaristo. So Bernardine Evaristo is the author of Girl, Woman, Other, which is a book, it was one of my top books of the year last year, absolutely loved it. And I've heard that this is even better. I actually got this one, it was on my radar anyway. I'm reading it for my Patreon book club in March. Every quarter of the year we read a book together and have a live show, we chat about it. So that's happening this month. So I've got this ready, and I also thought it'd be a good one to read during the Taylor Swift readathon, simply because it says Lover in it, and that's one of her albums. Loose connection, but we're rolling with it. The haul continues. I was sent this proof of The End of Men by Christina Sweeney-Baird. Even just the title, I can tell this is right up my alley. It's set in Glasgow in 2025. Dr. Amanda McLean is called to treat a patient with flu-like symptoms. It's going to be close to the bone. Within 3 hours, he is dead. So it's an unknown virus that sweeps through the country with deadly speed, but the victims are all men. Is this going to be the end of men? Cool. I also bought a book. This is Love Letters, Virginia Woolf and Vita Sackville-West. I pre-ordered this one and I was so excited when it arrived, and I still haven't read very much because I've just had, I don't know, I said I was in a reading slump, so I'm only this far through so far, but I was loving it so far. I've read some of these letters before, but I haven't had them all together in one book like this, and I talked about this, what did I talk about this in recently? Oh, in my video I made about books to read during Women's History Month, I talked a bit more about my obsession with Virginia Woolf and in particular with Vita Sackville-West, so I will not bore you by repeating it all, but all you need to know is that I really love these women and I'm excited to read about their sapphic love. Okay, then I actually read a book, so that was clever of me. Pachinko by Min Jin Lee is one that I previously had on my TBR that I finally got around to, and I loved it. It is long, it is sad, it is heavy, and I loved it. It's beautiful. I gave it 5 stars. It got so much sadder than I was prepared for it to go, but I forgive it. It's basically about a few generations of a Korean family. It's set during a period of history that I really did not know much about. I'm just checking. It starts in 1910, but that section is quite short. We quite quickly go up to the 1930s, and it's basically about what was going on in Korea and Japan during the Second World War. So I learned that period of history on repeat at school, but really just from the European perspective. I did not know anything about the relationship between Korea and Japan. So we follow the generations of this family from Korea to Japan and just see all of the different ways that their lives turn out. It's absolutely heartbreaking, but I loved it so much. Oh my god, I'm so warm. Okay, the jumper's coming off. Literally, what a relief. Okay, then we're back to some more hauls. I got these ones from work. This is Nightshift by Kiare Ladner and Can You See Me Now by Trisha Sakhlecha. So this is a thriller. I've read a book by this author before and I thought it was really fun. It was called Your Truth or Mine. This is set in India. It's a thriller between 2 time periods. So in the past we have these girls who meet at this elite Indian boarding school, and there's going to be some betrayal or some secrets that happen there. And then in the present day, one of these girls is a cabinet minister in the Indian government, and these secrets from her past are coming to the surface. So, you know, just all of the ingredients that I love in a thriller. This is Nightshift by Kiare Ladner, which sounds really interesting and unsettling. It's about a girl who is in her early 20s and she's just moved to London, and she meets another woman called Sabine who works a night shift and becomes infatuated with her and ends up getting onto the same night shift so that she can spend more time with her. So it's kind of this otherworldly, dream-like existence of working a night shift where you're just kind of out of sync with the rest of the world. But it's also about her obsession with this woman and it's kind of sexual attraction between them, but also their friendship. I don't really know yet because I haven't read it, but it sounds great. Then I read a book. I read Breasts and Eggs by Mieko Kawakami. This was a very, very interesting book and very strange. So it's divided into 2 parts, roughly breasts and eggs. The first part was actually written as a short story back in 2008, I think, but she did rewrite it for this novel. But they do feel very much like 2 separate books. They could work as well, the first one could work as a self-contained story. The second one feels like a whole new thing. So the first is just spanning a couple of days. Our main character is a woman in her 30s, I think she's in her 30s, and her sister, who's 10 years older, comes to stay along with her teenage daughter. And the older sister is there looking into getting a boob job, and the teenage daughter has recently stopped speaking. She will only write things down, she won't communicate verbally, and we read in her journal entries how obsessed and distressed and anxious she is about her body and her womanhood and the changes happening in her body and the things that are expected of her body as a woman, and also being influenced by her mother's feelings towards her body. And yeah, so it's all about women's bodies and womanhood. And it was funny because I had heard a lot of people saying that these two books within this felt very, very different. And basically every review that I read, people were saying that they loved the first half and then didn't really like the second half. And I was the opposite. I thought the first half was really, really interesting, but it wasn't like my favourite kind of book. Whereas the second half, I mean, it's much more than half, the second bit is the chunk of it, is then set 8 years after this, and it's all about that main character from the first book, her deciding that she wants to have a child, but she is asexual. It doesn't ever use that word, but she describes the experience, I believe, of being asexual, but wanting to have a child, and it's her quest to look into the options for her, like sperm donation. But we learn a lot that I really didn't know about the Japanese culture of sperm donation and how like taboo it is, and how she meets a lot of people who were born from sperm donation, but this was kept secret from them, and then when it is revealed, it's kind of revealed as this source of shame. So it is this really complicated experience. So yeah, I really liked that section, the second section, a lot more, because it felt chatty. It felt like you were just hearing this character's thought process, her ups and downs of figuring out what she wanted to do, and I was really into that. Whereas the first section I found harder to get into, I found harder to get invested, even though it was still very interesting, and the characters, like particularly the teenage daughter, were very interesting, I didn't quite feel as connected with them. It is written in a strange way in both sections. You get these odd little like waking dream sections that are randomly thrown in, and I never quite knew what to make of them. So it's an odd one, but one that I definitely am glad that I read. Then I hauled The Shadow King by Maaza Mengiste, and then I read The Shadow King by Maaza Mengiste. So this was for my book club with my offline friends from uni, and I didn't really like this book, but I did think it was very clever, and again I'm really glad that I read it. So this is set during the Second World War, or just before the Second World War. It's about the Italian invasion of Ethiopia in 1935. That's right, yeah. And I really did not know much about this. I vaguely had heard of it in history GCSE, but again, only learning it from the European perspective. So I'm really glad that I got to read this story from an Ethiopian perspective. But I just found it really, really hard to get into, and I found the characters very hard to bond with and connect to. And I actually found I was struggling so much with knowing what was going on that I had to spend a lot of time on Wikipedia looking up the history to make sense of it. And then I found I was actually kind of just more interested in reading what was on Wikipedia about it, because I found that easier to understand than this book. That doesn't mean that I don't think it's a really good book. It was one of those that when we had our book club chat, just this morning actually, we all kind of felt the same way about like not really having enjoyed it, but when we were discussing it and discussing all of the different techniques she was using, we kept being like, wow, that's so clever, what a good book, like what a well-written, well-crafted book, but just not one that was accessible for me to read, and not one that I felt emotionally attached to. I felt emotionally attached to the real story that I was discovering, but I didn't feel connected to these specific characters. And then finally, I read Almost Love by Louise O'Neill. I literally read this in like 3 hours last night. I sat right there on the sofa. You can't see the sofa, but it's there. And I just started it and I went the whole way through. And I thought it was fine. I've read 2 Louise O'Neill books before, her YA books, Only Ever Yours and Asking for It, forgot the title there. I loved both of those. I thought they were both brilliant. And this, I believe, is her first adult book, or was. It's come out a few years ago now. And it's about an abusive relationship, an emotionally abusive relationship, from the perspective of a woman 3 years after she leaves this relationship and is now in a new, not abusive, but not very happy relationship. And she's kind of comparing the two and looking back on her experience and what she learned from it. And it's... like I said, I thought it was fine. I get what Louise O'Neill was doing, and I did think it was a story that I could relate to, a story that brought up a lot of questions and a lot of issues with the way we talk about women and their feelings. Like, so many of the things that this main character was doing in the relationship in the past, I found myself wanting to like roll my eyes at her, or like think that she was the one being stupid. That was like my natural response, and I kept having to notice that in myself and question, like, why is it that I'm so conditioned to be like, well, that's her being stupid? So yeah, for that reason, I think it was a really interesting book to read, and that's why I read it so fast. I was definitely engaged, but I did find our main character incredibly hard to connect to. She was just so unlike me in every way, did not make the decisions I would make in any situation, and was so like unlikable to her friends. That was the reason I didn't like her. It wasn't so much about her decisions with this man, although I did find them questionable, as I've said, even if I'm trying to be less judgy about that. But she was just such an awful friend. I was just mad at her so much of the time. It's kind of a book that I want to reread, because having got to the end and then decided that I was being judgmental of her, I kind of want to go back and reread it and see if I can see her actions in a different light now that I'm telling myself not to be judgmental, like questioning why I've been told to be judgmental of her. So yeah, it's an interesting book, but I didn't love it as much as I've loved Louise Neal's other books. She does have a thriller now out. I think it's out now. I'm definitely going to give that one a go, because I do still really get on with her as a writer. And there you go, I'm done. I'm tired from talking so much and so fast. Is it just me, or does I talk faster than usual in this video?
Me from the future. I made a mistake, so I'm popping in to fix it. I said earlier in the video that I hauled 3 books for the challenge I did with Leanne, but I didn't haul 3 books. I hauled 2 books because I already owned The Immortalists. So we're just gonna take that last one off because I didn't haul it. I already had it.
So you will now see on the screen that I hauled 13 books in February, but I only read 9. That's still quite good, actually. I had this feeling that I hadn't read very much, but I read 9 books. That's pretty good. However, it is not quite enough to balance the books, and so to balance those scales, I now have to get rid of another 4 books. And you know what? This is kind of an easy decision. I have some of the Shopaholic books left over, and if you watched my Shopaholic vlog, you will see how much of a problem I had with that series. I still have these 3 left on my TBR: Christmas Shopaholic, and Shopaholic to the Stars, and Shopaholic to the Rescue. I don't remember which order they go in, other than that this one is last. This one I still, just because I love Christmas, there is a little stupid part of me that still wants to keep this book and read it, even though I'm sure I will hate it. But these 2 I just know for a fact that I will hate, and I don't want to put myself through the stress of having to read these. So these are going off my TBR, which means I've still got 2 left to go. Should I get rid of this one? I have an option here. If you've seen the most recent Balancing the Books, you know I introduced a new rule. So either I can get rid of books flat out and then they're off my TBR, that's fine, or I have like a little middle ground where I can put some books in purgatory where I have to read them within the next month, or I have to unhaul them. So it just buys me a little bit of time. So maybe I should do that for the next 2, unless there's anything else I'm happy to just flat out get rid of. I'm just worried because I know I'm doing the the Damn Readathon in March, so my TBR is going to be very, very full. So I feel like anything I put into purgatory is going to go anyway. I have this book here, Emily Wilding Davison. So it's a biography of Emily Davison, the suffragette. And I think I might just find it too sad to read. So she's the one who threw herself in front of the king's horse and died. And it just, even just the page I've opened on, I think I'm going to find this a very distressing book to read. And I do already know the story, so it's not like it's a distressing book, but it's important because it's me learning a new perspective or a new part of history. I do know quite a lot about the suffragettes and how terrible this was. I might get rid of this one. Okay, 3 down. I still have 1 to go until my books are balanced. I've had this book from the Wreck on my TBR for a while, and it's like sci-fi, I think. It's not a genre that I ever read, but it just looked interesting. But it's just been sitting there. Am I ever going to read it? Yeah, I think I want to read it. Oh, this is hard. Okay, this is a really, really shallow reason, but I just opened this book to remind myself what this is about, and the writing is so small. But I might get rid of this one. I'm not going to read a book with writing that small. Is that terrible? This is a book that I didn't even like deliberately haul. I ordered it in for a video I was filming for work, and then when I had it in my house I was like, this looks really good actually, I'm going to keep it. But I don't know if I'm actually going to read it. It's called Plain Song by Kent Haruf. Should I keep this one? think I'm gonna unhaul it, but comment if I've made a terrible, terrible mistake. So I did it! I actually unhauled some books, oh my goodness, which means my TBR is still at 37. I am smashing 2021 so far. But don't go yet, I've just remembered I also have to do book trail. This is my book trail board. I am working my way up to the balloons when I will get a shopping spree that does not count against me on balancing books. I will link below. I feel like I've said I will link below 100 times this video, but I will link below to the video where I first explained this so you can see all the rules. But let's go through and see how many shiny magnets I've won to go on my board. I can't actually remember the rules of this myself, please hold. Okay, so I get 1 magnet per buzzwordathon book that I read, which I think is going to be 0. The buzzwordathon buzzword for February was colours, like any colour in a book title, and I don't think I read a single book with a colour in the title. So none for Gretchen Wieners. Next I get a magnet per reading women prompt that I ticked off. That's a good question. Again, have not done my research. Let's see what the prompts are. They're very specific, these prompts. Where was the Shadow King set? Was that rural? I don't know. But they're like in the mountains. That's rural. The Shadow King, rural setting. There you go. By a woman in a rural setting. That is one of these that can go on the board. 1 point. Well done, Emma. That might be the best I can do right now. I then get 1 point per book that I brought my TBR down in balancing the books. Well, I balanced my books exactly, so no extra points there. Not doing great. And then finally, I'm aiming to read at least 18% books in translation. So for every book over that goal, I get 1. But I don't think I hit that. Did I read anything in translation? Oh yeah, I did. This was in translation. 1 out of 9, that's 11%. I just used a calculator, don't worry, I didn't just do that in my head. So no points there. So I got a grand total of 1 extra point this month. Fantastic stuff. But you will notice there is also another row at the bottom. This is my negative row. I have a strong goal this year to read at least 25% authors of colour. So any month that I don't achieve that, I get a negative space going towards here, where I have to donate some money. So again, it was 9 books that I read this month, and 1, 2, 3 of them were by authors of colour. So 3 out of 9 is more than 25%, so I don't have to put a bad gem on the board. Good explaining, Emma. I'm exhausted. I've been talking for such a long time. So there you go. That was Balancing the Books plus Book Trail. Happy March. Welcome to the next month of your life. I will see you next time.